Welcome to Classic Audiobooks Library. Timeless tales of mystery, romance, and adventure. Please subscribe. And now, let's begin.
Journal of Major George Washington, 1754. Written by George Washington. Narrated by Reid Carter. Advertisement. As it was thought advisable by His Honor the Governor to have the following account of my proceedings to and from the French on Ohio committed to print, I think I can do no less than apologize, in some measure, for the numberless imperfections of it. There intervened but one day between my arrival in Williamsburg and the time for the council's meeting, for me to prepare and transcribe, from the rough minutes I had taken in my travels, this journal, the writing of which only was sufficient to employ me closely the whole time, consequently admitted of no leisure to consult of a new and proper form to offer it in, or to correct or amend the diction of the old. Neither was I apprised, or did in the least conceive, when I wrote this for His Honor's perusal, that it ever would be published, or even have more than a cursory reading, till I was informed, at the meeting of the present General Assembly, that it was already in the press. There is nothing can recommend it to the public but this. Those things which came under the notice of my own observation, I have been explicit and just in a recital of. Those which I have gathered from report, I have been particularly cautious not to augment, but collected the opinions of the several intelligencers and selected from the whole the most probable and consistent account. G. Washington. The Journal. Wednesday, October 31st, 1753. Was commissioned and appointed by the Honorable Robert Dinwiddie, Esq. Governor of Virginia, to visit and deliver a letter to the Commandant of the French forces on the Ohio, and set out on the intended journey the same day. Thursday, November 1st. I arrived at Fredericksburg and engaged Mr. Jacob Vanbrum to be my French interpreter. We then proceeded to Alexandria, where we provided necessaries. From thence we went to Winchester and got baggage, horses, and other supplies. From there, we pursued the new road to Will's Creek, where we arrived on the 14th of November. There I engaged Mr. Christopher Gist to act as our guide, and also hired 4 others as assistants, Barnaby Curran and John Macquire, Indian traders, Henry Stewart, and William Jenkins. With these men in company, we departed the next day, leaving behind the last signs of settled inhabitants. The weather had turned cold, and the roads were difficult. The excessive rains and vast quantity of snow that had fallen prevented our reaching Mr. Fraser's trading post, at the mouth of Turtle Creek on the Monongahela River, until Thursday, November 22nd. We were informed upon arrival that messengers had been sent a few days earlier to the traders downriver, announcing the death of the French general and the return of the main body of the French forces into winter quarters. The rivers were swollen and impassable without swimming our horses. This obliged us to borrow a canoe from Mr. Fraser. I sent Barnaby Curran and Henry Stewart down the Monongahela with our baggage to meet us at the forks of the Ohio, about 10 miles away, where we intended to cross the Allegheny River. I arrived there before the canoe, and spent the time observing the geography of the point where the 2 rivers meet. The land at the forks is extremely well situated for the construction of a fort, having complete command of both rivers. The land at the point is 20 to 25 feet above the usual level of the water, and is surrounded by a large bottom of flat, well-timbered ground, very convenient for building. The rivers are each about a quarter of a mile wide and meet at near right angles, Allegheny flowing from the northeast and Monongahela from the southeast. The Allegheny is a rapid, swift river, while the Monongahela is deep and still, with no visible fall. About 2 miles from this location, on the southeast side of the river, lies the place where the Ohio Company intended to erect a fort. There lived Shingus, king of the Delawares. We called upon him to invite him to council at the Logstown. As I had taken special note yesterday of the situation at the forks, my curiosity led me to examine this alternate site more particularly. I found it greatly inferior, especially in terms of advantage and defense. A fort at the forks would be equally well positioned on the Ohio and would command the Monongahela, which runs up to our settlements and is extremely well suited for water carriage, being of a deep, still nature. Moreover, a fort at the forks might be built at far less expense than at the other location. Nature has provided for water defense at the lower place, but the hill where it would stand, being about 1/4 of a mile in length and gradually descending on the landward side, would make fortification difficult and costly. The entire flat on the hill would need to be included within the defenses, or the slope on the landward side made extremely high, or the hill itself cut away. Otherwise, the enemy could raise batteries within effective range without being exposed to return fire from the fort. Shingus accompanied us to the logs town, where we arrived between sunset and dark on November 25th, 25 days after I had departed from Williamsburg. The journey brought us through land that was at times extremely good and at other times rough and difficult. Upon arriving, I visited Monocatuca, since the Half-King was away at his hunting cabin on Little Beaver Creek, about 15 miles off. Through my Indian interpreter, John Davison, I informed Monocatuca that I had been sent as a messenger to the French general and had been ordered to call upon the sachems of the 6 nations to inform them of my mission. I presented him with a string of wampum and a twist of tobacco and requested that he send for the Half-King, which he promised to do by dispatching a runner in the morning. He also agreed to gather the other sachems. That evening, I invited Monocatuca and the other great men present to my tent, where we spoke for about an hour before they departed. According to the best observations I could make, Mr. Gist's new settlement, which we passed, bears west-northwest about 70 miles from Will's Creek. Shanapin's town, or the Forks, lies north by west or north-northwest, about 50 miles from that point. From there to the logs town is nearly west, about 18 to 20 miles. In all, the distance we traveled from the back settlements is at least 135 to 140 miles. Later that same day, 4 of 10 Frenchmen who had deserted from a company stationed at Kuskuskas, near the mouth of the river, arrived in town. I questioned them and obtained the following information. They had been sent from New Orleans with 100 men and 8 canoe loads of provisions. Their orders were to deliver supplies to this location, where they expected to meet a similar force coming from the forts on the near side of Lake Erie, who had not yet arrived when these men deserted. I asked about the situation of the French along the Mississippi, the number of their troops, and the forts they had constructed. They informed me there were 4 small forts between New Orleans and the Black Islands, each garrisoned with about 30 or 40 men and a few small artillery pieces. At New Orleans itself, which lies near the mouth of the Mississippi, there are 35 companies of 40 men each, housed in a strong fort that mounts 8 carriage guns. At the Black Islands, there are several companies and a fort with 6 guns. The Black Islands are located approximately 130 leagues above the mouth of the Ohio River, which itself is about 350 leagues above New Orleans. They also reported that there is a small palisade fort on the Ohio at the mouth of the Obish River, about 60 leagues from the Mississippi. The Obish heads near the western end of Lake Erie and serves as a key communication route between the French forces on the Mississippi and those around the Great Lakes. These deserters had traveled up from the lower Shawanoa town with one Mr. Brown, an Indian trader, and were making their way toward Philadelphia. Around 3 o'clock that afternoon, the Half-King arrived in Logstown. I went immediately to invite him and Davison privately to my tent. There, I asked the Half-King to recount the details of his journey to the French commandant, how he had been received, and what path we would need to take to reach the French fort. He told me the most direct and level route was now impassable due to many large, miry savannas. Instead, we would have to travel by way of Venango, and he believed it would take us 5 or 6 good days' travel to reach the nearest French fort. He then described his reception by the French commander. The man had spoken to him sternly and abruptly, demanding to know his business. The Half-King replied with a speech which he now recited to me. "Fathers, I am come to tell you your own speeches, what your own mouths have declared. Fathers, in former days, you set before us a silver basin, in which was the leg of a beaver. You invited all nations to come and eat in peace and plenty, and warned that if any among us disturbed that peace, a rod would be laid beside the dish to scourge them. Now, fathers, you are that disturber. You come uninvited, build towns, and take land by force. We kindled a fire long ago at a place called Montreal, and asked you not to move beyond it. This land is ours, not yours. We ask you to return to that place, and leave us in peace. We live between the English and the French. The land is not yours nor theirs, but was given to us by the Great Spirit as our home. We ask both of you to leave and observe who will show us the most respect. That is the side we will favor. The half-king said that this was the substance of what he spoke, and then described the French commander's response. According to the half-king, the French commander answered with great pride and defiance. His reply was as follows: "Now, my child, I have heard your speech. You spoke first, it is now my turn. Where is the wampum you took from me, the one with the marks of the towns on it? I do not recognize the wampum you bring now. You discharge me off this land with it, but I will not listen to you. I am not afraid of flies or mosquitoes, and Indians are such as those. Down the river I will go, and I will build upon it. If the river were blocked, I have men enough to burst it open. I will tread under my feet all who oppose me, including their allies, for my force is like the sand upon the seashore. Here is your wampum, I fling it back at you. Child, you speak foolishly. You say this land belongs to you, but not even the black of your nail is yours. I saw the land long before you did. Before the Chinoas and you were at war, we had already come. It is my land, and I will have it. Let who will say otherwise. I will buy and sell with the English," he added mockingly, "but if people wish to be ruled by me, they may expect kindness, otherwise not." The half-king also told me that the French had invited him to return with the rest of the sachems. He refused, saying that he had finished his message. The commandant then informed him of France's orders to build 4 forts and take control of the Ohio River region down to the Mississippi. After telling me all this, the half-king gave me 3 strings of wampum, saying they had been presented to him by the French at his departure. He asked me to take notice of them and to remember what had passed. As we intended to hold a council with the sachems before proceeding any farther, I invited the half-king, Monocatuca, and other chiefs to my tent. They came and heard me explain that I would await the arrival of a French officer expected at Logstown. Afterward, I would proceed to Venango and hoped they would accompany me. They agreed, saying they would first send messengers to the Mingos and other allied tribes to inform them of our purpose and gather support. November 26th. We met in council with the Indian leaders. The half-king, Monocatuca, and several others were present. I made a formal speech to them, explaining the nature of my mission from the governor of Virginia. I emphasized that I came in peace, that my purpose was to learn the truth of French intentions, and that the governor desired a fair understanding between all parties. The half-king responded with seriousness. He spoke of the French claiming lands they had not purchased, of building forts uninvited, and of their general disregard for native treaties. He said that though the English and French both claimed friendship, it would be judged by actions, not words. After this, we exchanged belts of wampum and smoked the calumet in the traditional ceremony of agreement and understanding. November 27th. We departed from Logstown with the half-king, Monocatuca, and 3 other Indian companions. That day we traveled about 12 miles and lodged at a small Indian village. Our shelter was a Delaware wigwam, where we were welcomed and rested for the night. The weather was bitterly cold. The snow lay thick on the ground, and the wind cut through our clothing. Our horses moved slowly, and the trails were difficult to follow. November 28th to 30th. We continued traveling toward Venango, following a path chosen by the Indians to avoid French patrols. The route led us through dense forests, over steep ridges, and across half-frozen streams. At night we camped in the woods, lighting small fires and wrapping ourselves in blankets to preserve heat. Food was scarce. The Indians snared a few small animals, and we shared whatever provisions we could carry. The burden of the journey began to weigh heavily on the men. December 1st. We reached Venango, where the French flag flew above the fort. The garrison consisted of about 50 men, commanded by Captain Joncaire, who received us with courtesy but expressed strong French claims to the land. That evening, Joncaire spoke to us of France's rights over the entire Ohio Valley. He claimed they had long possessed the territory and were now acting under direct orders from the King of France. Though polite in tone, he made it clear that the French would not yield. The half-king and the Indian delegates confronted Joncaire directly, telling him the land belonged to the tribes, not to France. Joncaire listened without much reply, smiling at their words. That night, he offered strong drink to the Indians, who soon became intoxicated. December 2nd. We stayed at Venango to rest our horses and prepare for the next leg of our journey. Captain Joncaire remained cordial but reserved. He offered us provisions and arranged for a French escort to accompany us part of the way to Fort Le Boeuf, where we were to meet the commanding officer, Monsieur St. Pierre. The half-king confided in me that he no longer trusted the French. Though they spoke smoothly, he believed their intentions were hostile. He feared that once we entered deeper into their territory, they might try to detain or mislead us. December 3rd. We left Venango with our French escort. The weather grew worse. We crossed icy streams and rode over rugged hills crusted with snow. Our horses slipped frequently, and we made slow progress. December 4th to 10th. For nearly a week, we traveled northward through deep woods and winter storms. At night, we camped among the trees with what little shelter we could make. Several times we had to break ice to water the horses. One of them slipped on a steep bank and had to be left behind. The Indian guides remained with us but complained often of cold and hunger. Even the half-king, normally strong and steady, grew visibly weary. December 11th. We reached Fort Le Boeuf in the afternoon. The post was well built of wood, fortified with bastions and several mounted cannon. The garrison numbered about 100 men, all well equipped and disciplined. We were received by Monsieur St. Pierre, a man of experience and dignity. He greeted us with civility and accepted the governor's letter. He promised a written reply after consulting with his officers. Meanwhile, we were given rooms and treated as honored guests. December 12th to 14th. We remained at Fort Le Boeuf while the French officers prepared their reply. I took careful note of the fort's layout, the size of the garrison, and their supplies. They had a large quantity of provisions, tools for building canoes, and every indication of preparing for a spring campaign to strengthen their position on the Ohio. I asked questions where I could. The French made no secret of their intent. They planned to fortify the Ohio and expel all English traders and settlers. They claimed this land by right of discovery and occupation. On the evening of December 14th, Monsieur St. Pierre delivered his written answer to Governor Dinwiddie's letter. It was respectful but firm. He said he could not yield the territory or abandon his posts without direct orders from the King of France, and he reaffirmed that the land west of the Allegheny Mountains belonged to the French crown. December 15th to 26th. We departed the next morning. The return journey was even more difficult. The snow was deeper, the trails frozen, and the rivers hazardous. At the Allegheny River, the ice gave way beneath me, and I fell in, but escaped without injury. Mr. Gist helped pull me to safety. We traveled on foot to avoid French patrols, and at one point were nearly ambushed by an Indian guide who tried to shoot us. After escaping, we spent one night exposed, without fire, in the snow. January 16th, 1754. At last, we returned safely to Williamsburg. I delivered St. Pierre's letter to the governor and reported all that I had seen and learned. Conclusion. Though this journey was marked by cold, hunger, danger, and fatigue, I trust the intelligence gained will prove valuable to the colony. The French are resolved. Their forts are strong, their troops prepared, and their intentions clear. The tribes are watching to see which power will prevail. I humbly submit this report to assist in the defense of our rightful territory, and in hope that future measures may be taken with knowledge and resolve. George Washington.
This concludes the end of the story. Thank you for listening to Classic Audiobooks Library. To hear more free stories like this, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We hope you'll join us again for more timeless stories and original works. Until next time.